Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. Thank you very much for being here. Again, going down this rabbit hole of talking about game design. And of course, these are some of the pitfalls I fall into, but I thought I would share some of these different features and things, the way we look at um, how the sausage is made when it comes to tabletop role playing game creation and development and things like that. And sometimes I find things or want to return to a concept uh, useful in tabletop role playing design that sometimes we really don't think about. And one big one that I've brought up this before in the past, but I thought I would just touch upon this with um, uh, further insight into it. We're going to talk about the idea of how death sucks in tabletop role playing games, and what does death mean in our tabletop role playing experiences. Again, we're going to go over the fruitful void a little bit, um, essentially talking about games that have no rules or descriptors involving something that might be fundamental to playing the game. And then we're going to talk about, of course, random elements, useful before, during, and after, and how those random tools are used, and some other features as well. So, yep. So let's talk about the death issue here. Thank you very much there. Hey shitlords. So the member Shy Squad says, is death even an issue in Obsidian? Because it seems like as long as you're backed up on a cortical stack and don't mind picking a little baggage, you won't actually die, right? Okay, so um let's get a little bit high-minded, shall we, if you don't mind. Um we as gamers, I think sometimes it erroneously define death in role playing games, defining it in the way that we would define realistic death. Death we would find in an action movie or a novel or a graphic novel. Um, the fantasy sense of death is the proverbial death of Boromir in Lord of the Rings, who's constantly, being shot with arrows, but he stands tall, defending his fellow hobbits running away from the Orokai. And that, while that they're not wrong in thinking about that we're not wrong that some people say, well, death should be on the table. If I'm going to play a lethal game of heroes and adventure, that death should be on the table. But I believe we're thinking of it the wrong way. And here's what I mean. Death in a role playing game and death in the literal sense of the word are two separate aspects. And to be honest with you, uh, death is actually not only boring, but many role playing games, except in the indie world, don't even address what character death really means as far as how game masters and players need to handle it. So, for example, in if we take a look at the world's most popular role playing game, they have a consistently stacked method of preventing you from dying. Even though, hey, good morning there, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, hello everyone. Death in role playing games, in the very meta sense, that sounds like medicine. In the meta sense of the word, is the inability for your character to function. You no longer have the ability to play in the game. You're dead. Your character is not functional. Now, you can play board games, card games, uh, other types of games, and you can have death in those games as well. Meaning that if you play Monopoly, you run out of money. Guess what? You're effectively dead. You are no longer functional within the context of the game. But um, I don't believe I don't believe I've seen that though. Uh, yeah, exactly. And so, sometimes, like we're talking about Boromir being shot with hundreds of arrows and hit points is just kind of a strange. It has a. It is a story narrative element that isn't expressed that way. And so we sometimes when it comes to things like armor class, hit points, alignment, things like that, the big three, that they don't tell us what it really means, and the game hasn't changed its very old foundations. So um, the problem with not being able to play any longer is really that's the problem. Well, if you're 15 minutes into a game of a 3-hour session, what do you do when your character's dead? What like do you we don't even have rules for that in most games. Does it They don't say, "Well, hey game master, have them roll up another character." And it's like, "Well, if you were going to roll up another character and that player rolls up basically doesn't even roll up a character. We call it rolling up a character, but in many games you don't even roll it up. You just pick what you want. Then do they just pick their cousin who happens to have a similar hairstyle and favorite favorite similar favorite ice cream flavor and somehow has the exact same equipment, right? We also have layered intricacies to prevent characters from dying. Oh, well, they're not dead, they're dying. Oh, all you have to do is walk over and kick their body and they stop dying. Oh, there's also a way to instantly have them pop up on their feet, and after a while we're looking at these how death doesn't emulate what we think it should. And then we even have in a feature in especially fifth edition, but some features in fantasy D20 games where you have the yo-yo effect where a character goes down and then they pop right back up again. And there's a disconnect in our minds sometimes because we look at fantasy television and movies and sometimes even video games, and we're like, we never see our heroes go down and pop back up and go back down and pop back up again and go back to like that. I mean, it kind of happens, but it's more dramatic. And so, and there are plenty of games that have very high stakes where death isn't on the table. Yet, for some reason, amongst our tabletop community, when you remove death as a function of the game, people go, "Oh, well, that means that game would suck. There's no way I would play it." Yet, we have people um, who will dig and pry and beg and plead for their character not to die in a game where death is very apparent. So, how do some, I would say, how do some games address it that have addressed it head on? So, for games where death is very easy and very common, usually what we have is something. It can also be called the funnel, but in most recently, if you take a look at, and I love semantics in terms of words. Shadow Dark calls it the Gauntlet, and I even have a game called Isklof. It's about Viking warfare and playing a Viking in a low magic, high brutality system where they have a legacy system involved. And essentially, whether you're playing a funnel or a gauntlet or a legacy mechanism, essentially what it's saying to you is, guess what? You're probably going to need more than one character. I would even go so far as to include Ars Magica in this as a role playing game that's back from the 90s, 80s, and 90s. Uh, I don't remember when it was created, but so essentially, instead of playing one character and hoping that they go through all of these arcs and then your character's supposed long-lived career of 38 sessions is ended in the first 12 minutes. You play a number of characters knowing that many of them will probably die. And in the funnel, you essentially you play zero level characters in a level system. In Shadow Dark, it's called a gauntlet, and essentially it's the same thing. You play a zero level character, and the characters that survive go on to become one or more of them go on to become first level characters and further on. Using the Isklof legacy system, Viking legacy system, you basically have a family, a corral of characters that you can call upon that have some familial or uh, they have a connection to each other through family, through blood, through honor. One character may die and the other one comes on because they are the long lost cousin or brother, or they survived in war, or they became blood relatives. They're not genetically related, but they're um, connected to each other, or they are married, or it's the children of, and it's like a legacy system. Essentially, it's just a story element tacked onto the, yeah, I need another character. And some people, it's strange in a role-playing game community that to have a backup character, some people feel like, well, if you have backup characters, maybe you're not invested in the current character, which brings me to Ars Magica, which comes back from the 80s and 90s, in which you you make a stable of characters. Some are primary, which are magi. You have secondary characters known as the custos, and they are non mages, but they are specialized characters in some way, shape, or form. Some might be fey touched, others may be very experienced knights, another might be an oracle, another character might be a shapeshifter or something. And then you have a third tier characters, and those third tier characters are basically like servants. They're cooks, horsemen, valets, and you get to pick and choose them. And every once in a while, you might want to bump one up a little bit because you know you've lost one or more of these stable of characters. And the lowest form of characters are mixed in. You can mix them and match them amongst all the other player characters. And it's kind of weird. Like Shai says, is playing multiple backup characters simultaneously always a bad idea? For example, in guaranteed lethality games like Cthulhu, I remember playing it in. Here's again the I didn't want to go too far down this rabbit hole of death, but yeah, in Cthulhu, when I played the game, we would always have a stable of backup characters that weren't our characters. They were just, you could pick up another one. So, for example, uh, if it was 1920s Midwest, maybe there is a deputy that's in the story, and anyone who loses a character can then pick up that deputy. And then there's another person who might be a farmer, or they might be a novelist, or they might be a detective, or they might be a scholar. And we would just make up like 12 of them. Some would be ours, others would be in the pile. And then you can, if your character dies or gets captured or whatever, goes insane or something in Cthulhu, we would just pick one out of the group and then keep on playing. They were like the equivalent of like 80% done, with maybe like a one word first name or last name, a generalization of what they could do. And then there were little elements where we could add features onto them, like, oh, they smoke a cigar, they have a limp, and they always wear a fedora hat or something, right? Which might not be on the character sheet. They were like 80% done. And I sometimes wonder why we don't include that in a game. Like Dungeons and Dragons doesn't mention it, and it's the most popular game. What does the game master do if you just murder killed a player in the game? And they are, and let's be honest, sometimes we play with people that we want to play with all the time. Their value added, their presence, um, they're your friend. They're the person you want to interact with. They're the person who may have paid as a paid DM to be in your game. And if they're dead, what happens? We even have popular like Dimension 20 and Critical Role games where their livelihood is based on the actor and the character showing up each session. What happens when they die and how do they handle that? And I'm surprised games don't handle that feature. So let's talk about games that don't have death on the table but still have a lot of stakes. So yeah, we're going to talk about Obsidian Star, um, Altered Carbon, Eclipse Phase. I think I have. Do I have my Altered Carbon shirt nearby? I think I wore it yesterday. Um, there we go. Altered Carbon has this feature in it, as well as Eclipse Phase, and I'm going to bring up side note for other games. There's a game called uh Teenagers, TFOS, Teenagers from Outer Space, which is an Art Talsorian game. Toon is another game that doesn't have death on the table. Kids on Bikes, I believe, is the name of the game, as well as Tales from the Loop and Things from the Flood is another game that where death really isn't on the table. Now, to be honest with you, in uh, Altered Carbon and Eclipse Phase, and even in Obsidian Star, death is on the table, but it's rare. So, in posthumanism, transhumanism, the idea is that every human being. Well, this is too large to show you as a thumb drive, but I'm going to hold it up. So every human being has a their entire all their memories, their personality, everything they experience is on a backup drive. And that backup drive could be external, like I'm holding in my hand, and it resides inside the body, and it could be extracted and or downloaded into a copy or a backup brain or whatever, and that character could then, in concerning Obsidian Star, it's called a zipper because the body's considered a jacket. And the colloquialism, the slang term is that you can get zipped into another jacket and come back if you are killed. So in an easy way, if you think about it, there is a like video gamey uh like restart, backup, reconfigure location, like, oh, there's a save point. It's the save point gaming system. That is true, but there are limitations to it, and the limitations are um, s- psychosis and memory loss. So a character could literally, I don't know, die from reentry into a planet, a planet's atmosphere. They could get blown the hell up from being impacted from an orbital strike. They could suffer a very horrible death through gamma radiation bursts or something like that. And yes, they could be re-instanced, zipped back into another jacket, but are their memories like 3 weeks old? Is the backup corrupted? Do they, your backup brain, your zipper, your cortical stack could be removed, physically carved out of your skull, and then yeah, death is rare in Obsidian, where one blaster bolt inside a ship is all it takes. Yeah, yeah, you don't want to do that. Yeah, Obsidian Star, you don't want to start taking lethal weapons and having gunfights in starships. That's the worst thing you want to do. Not often talked about or even shown in science fiction, but in this game, yeah, you most lethal weapons, you don't want to use them inside of a ship. There are some non-lethal weapons that, like splat guns and stun guns and things like that you can use, but you don't want to do that. But a character could literally, a an ally could take a knife, cut your I don't know, backup drive out of the back of your head, take it someplace, get it zipped back into another jacket, or you can be downloaded into another morph. But you might remember the trauma of being murder killed in the first place, which that trauma will carry with you. So after a certain period of time, your character may not die, but you may have no more memories or motivation, or suffer such trauma that your character is unplayable, which is the equivalent of death. So some games have death off the table, but your character literally is unplayable, which is the equivalent of dying anyway. So in games where you play children, like Kids on Bikes and Tales from the Loop, which is from the 80s, and Things from the Flood, which is from the 90s, Karai says, I like unsay terminology. But I'm not exactly sure what you mean. What that means, but it sounds kind of cool. Like, hmm. Um, in those games, when you play children, your character can't die. But those games are cool. And why? You can, instead of dying in the character in the game, you can go on punishment. You can be grounded. You can go to juvie. Your parents can move away from the city, and you no longer are with your friends and family and whatnot. That's how your character, air quotes, dies in the game. Your character can also be unplayable when you turn 18 and maybe you go on to college or something like that. Like, um, retirement is an option. Having no more motivation is an option. Like playing Monopoly, you run out of money, you're dead. So death, I think, in game doesn't need to be death, and death outside the game doesn't need to be what we think it is. I think we just need to redefine it. And so when you're making your own game and designing your own game, what does death mean? Is it what feature or what aspect makes your character unplayable? Autocorrect. Oh, this is not that, not unsaid. Damn, auto incorrect. I meant zipper and jacket. I like playing with words, and so it's it can be an annoying feature, but I like to play with terminology and recontextualizing things. So uh, fashion and fabric terminology I use in Obsidian Star to represent the mind and the body and the digital aspect of our minds in a futuristic world. So there's terms like threads and weaving and fabric and lattice and zippers and buttons and jackets, and so yes, there's all that kind of stuff in it. And of course, I like slang. I like the origins of slang, and so one begats another begets the other, right? So zip drive, we still have zip drives, although they're not used as much. But when you have and I'm going to hold up something that probably doesn't look like it, but if you have this device in the back of your head and it looks like a zip drive, people would just say, "Oh, remember those old zip drives? Yeah, I'm holding my best friend Giorgio in my hand. I'm gonna stick him in my back pocket. When we get opportunity, we're gonna find a jacket, a body to put him back in. Zip jacket. To me, it just fell into place. Um, it's not called that in Altered Carbon. In Altered Carbon, they call it in Altered Carbon. They call it digital human freight, and so. Digital human freight is essentially what the descriptor is for the human mind. And in eclipse phase, it's a cortical stack, and then you have a morph. So your morph is your body, and you could be like have a biomorph, a mechanical, a synthetic morph, um, in eclipse phase. But it's it's your cortical stack. Now, cortical stack isn't is used both that terminology is both used in altered carbon and eclipse phase, and I believe you can't uh, both the word cortical and stack, you can't copyright it. But I didn't want to say cortical stack, so I was like, I like something a little bit slangy, and also sometimes we use words to describe a thing so it's not as harmful as we think it is. It's like using medical terminology is used to devoid ourselves doctors to describe what's going on and divorce themselves from the emotional impact of it. And so using a knife to cut out a hard drive in the back of your dead friend's skull is pretty nasty. So using language to not make it seem as bad as it is yeah. Yeah. Drew says, so finally I can write. I had been busy. I had listened so far. You're fine there, Drew. Um, okay, so death, both in game and out of the game. When we design games, I think we need to think about what that means for the game. That we can both remove the physical death of characters from games if that's not the point of the game. Another example would be uh, Blades in the Dark. You know, I got to bring up Blades in the Dark, um, and political games or games about reputation or something. Death might not be death. So in Blades in the Dark, yes, your character can physically get shot or killed or stabbed, but The death in Blades in the Dark is not that, it's heat, it's getting arrested. So when your character goes down to, I'm just going to make this up, 0 hit points, is that death or is that capture? Is that enslavement? Is that hypnosis or teleportation or bodily transformation or ascension or descension, right? They, Role playing games could very easily, let's say you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and your character is a tiefling and you have the blood of devils or demons in you. When you drop to 0 hit points, why don't they have a feature where you get pulled, a big giant flaming demonic hand pulls you down into hell until you come back some kind of way? I brought this up about characters that can't show up for a gaming session. And I'm like, why don't we just build that into the game? Like, oh, you're a wizard and you are summoned away, or you're a druid and this is a natural cycle and you have lycanthropic tendency to shapeshift into a bird and fly away and come back later on or something. Like, why don't we build that in? I don't understand why that's not a feature, but whatever. If you're a knight, maybe you have to go atone for something, or you've been called away on other duties and then come back later. Whatever. And death need not be death as well. Maybe like Monopoly, maybe it's a removal of your wealth or your political influence. You have none anymore. You've been embarrassed. Maybe it is connections you have, or you're playing a role playing game about entertainment. Maybe you don't have a contract for your record company or entertainment company or so. Like, there are ways to be removed from the game without dying. And then there are other things. If death really is on the table, how do you keep playing? Do you have backup characters? Do you have there's an old game called Paranoia that's been around and you get 6 clones. Your character dies, you just pick up another clone, right? Hey, I'm playing number 4. Okay. Why not? Why not have family members show up, or um those who've been dedicated? You once played a noble and now you're playing the oracle or the sage or the mentor or the cousin of the other character. But I don't know. It bothers me that it's a thing that we are brilliant enough as a community to have had top 5 ways to deal with a thing, and we still haven't dealt with that thing. And I think that's really weird. Uh, um, Shinobi says, I don't know if you had any thought of this, but there was a HFY story called Creature 88 where the memory of the main character was backed up and he got created, and when he died he needed to find the body to get the new stuff. I'm not familiar with that story, but I've there's an old novel I read that I really loved called Voice of the Whirlwind, where a guy gets killed and his backup is brought back, but his backup was 15 years old, and he investigates his own murder. And I think it's called Voice of the Whirlwind. Walter John Williams, Voice of the Voice of the Whirlwind. Yep, Walter John Williams, 19. When was this book written? 1987. Cyberpunk book. Yep. Yeah, a guy gets re-instanced. His backup brain is brought back to a clone, and he's 15 years younger, and he's got to navigate his own death. But there's people who he's had relationships with that remember the 15 years of their relationship, and he doesn't. Drew says, for my own system, I have death, but it's completely up to the players if they want their character to die or not. That's another thing that's happening. Fabula Ultima is a game. There's lots of games now. Hell, the new Daggerheart has a system where characters can choose to die or not. And what cost is it, if any, when a character can choose to die? Now, death could be very temporary. And what I mean by that is maybe a character is just removed from the scene temporarily. And when the scene changes, that character comes back mysteriously or magically or psychically, or is transported or reconstructed like a machine or something like that. Yeah, yeah. What if you are rendered? I'm not going to put that up there from brain damage, but it's still basically functional. Well, if that's something in a game, right? Like, for example, because I was going to pull up Cairn not Karen. Because we're going to go off into our next thing. In Karen, when a character dies, you can suffer a scar, and a scar can be some form of narrative element on your character that gets ticked off. Like in Morkborg is another feature where they do this, where instead of just constant death, you might suffer a scar, like a limp, or your eyes put out, or you lose a finger, or whatever. And some players, even with a narrative like that, it's like, oh, my nose got lopped off and I've got these 6 other scars. I don't even want to play my character any longer, right? Sometimes we can be a little vain even in our own imaginations, and but there are many people who, especially who like really embrace the OSR, where death is relatively common. I don't want to say common; it is a byproduct of being stupid, um, or the dice just don't roll in your favor. And they're used to like, oh, great, the system is so easy. I can just roll up a character or put a character together in 5 minutes. And I remember playing in games where we'd have like 3x5, or well, actually it would be 5x8 cards. And hey, my character died in this scene. I'm going to step off to the side, eat a slice of pizza, use the restroom, got to get a bio break, start writing up another character, and then I get introduced back into the game because I was part of a nomadic tribe, or I was captured by a big bad when the players break into the next part of the dungeon or something like that. So yeah. Yeah, the Karen RPG with Karens or Karen. Yeah. Yes. But yes, Karen's on Karen. That's true. It could have Karen's on Karen. Um, let's see, Drew. But Drew says, but even if one dies, a player still can fully participate in the game since the narrative is not tied to character actions. That's interesting. I'd like to see how that works. Because there is this idea that if my character dies, I can't participate any longer. And there are other ways to do it, right? You can pick up an NPC and just elevate them up to a player character. You could play an NPC on the side of the game master and work against the players. We used to do that with Hordes of Monsters, where um, when we would split the party, somebody would be like, "Oh, I'll take over some skeletons," and then they would try to murder kill the other players, which appeased a little bit of a sociopathic element in some of my old players, and also you're playing skeletons, right? You're in a fantasy game. You're playing the crunchy characters, monsters or something, and it allowed them. It, it can scratch an itch where it's like, I'm going to try to kill your character. I've got 3 hit points. I'm going to roll the dice. Damn it, I missed. But we're just having fun. And then of course the heroes, are big bad heroes, and they go crushing the skeletons and stuff. But it can be fun. No, we're going to show. So let's get into something. Let's flow into something known as the fruitful void. And I appreciate you, Drew, very much for bringing this up into my attention and everyone else's attention. And the to try to describe the fruitful void is specifically not having a rule for something that exists in tabletop role playing games. And there are many OSR games that embrace the fruitful void by not describing something that is in the game, even though it has a mechanical or can have a mechanical function. So this is the role-playing game Cairn. Even when I try to not pronounce it that way, it still comes across that way. Anyway, this is I'm also showing this to you because this is Cairn First Edition. Both First Edition and Second Edition are having an SRD, which I'm showing to you, and it is an OGL, which means you can use it the way you wish. And this is the front cover of Cairn, and written by Yokai Gal, and it's open for you to reinterpret and all that kind of stuff if you wish. But I want to show you something specific in this particular game, and it is a what some are calling NSR, New School Rules, New School Renaissance, um, and It is this feature. I'm going to show you something specific, okay? So this is a D100 list of spells. So D100 spell books in a D100, and its spell descriptions is page 16 to 18. And what page are we on? I'm sorry, I'm moving. I'm going to move it a little bit because there's some little bit of artwork here. That's page 7. So this is a D100 list of spells, and when I move to page 16 and 18, you're not going to find much more than this spell, right? Number 31 is Fall Cloud. What are the rules for Fall Cloud? How big is it? How long does it last? How dense is it? Is there a rule for being able to look through it? What color is it? Can I shift it around? Can I put it inside of a bottle? Will it blow away in the wind? There are no rules for that. None. Number 60 is Phobia. Number 80 is Spectacle. What does Spectacle mean as a spell? What is interesting in this fruitful void of spell descriptions is that there are very few, if any, direct damage spells. So all of these are utility spells, 100 of them, but they are not direct damage spells. But if I move down to page 16, 17, 18, and come on. I was going to type it in, but the numbers don't actually meet up. So I'm moving very quickly. Sorry. Okay. Monsters are very easy to create. And this is free. If you want to get this game. So if we go to control weather, number 19, control weather, this is all it says. Almost all of these are one sentence, maybe two. You may alter the type of weather at will, but you do not otherwise control it. What? So what are we supposed to do? And the fruitful void especially in the OSR, is us having a conversation about the creative use of a thing because there are no rules for it. And so there's this implication that a character may have access to something like a cone of foam. Like, what the hell is foam? Or deafen, or arcane eye, or whatever these things are. All of these spells are like one word treatise on what it can do. And the purpose of having the fruitful void in terms of this is to be creative. It's on purpose. Hey, if you can create an elemental wall, number 28 here, and create an elemental wall, a straight wall of ice or fire, 50 feet long, 10 feet high, rises from the ground, then there's no damage feature. It doesn't say whether it's impenetrable. It doesn't say how heavy it is. It doesn't mention, can you shape it? If it's 50 feet long, is it just a straight? Can I make it an arc or a circle or what have you? Right. And that conversation, that back and forth, is supposed to happen. Now, in many times in role-playing games, that can be very Thanks, Drew. Drew's like, yeah, I would say the fall cloud should be at least as dense as any Karen can be. Yes. So, the one of the features of the OSR is player ingenuity, not necessarily character ingenuity. Characters had features that could be written on a 3x5 card. It's a small card. You write it down. Guess what? My character has a spell called Filch. A visible item teleports to your hands. Great. Okay. Now let's have a conversation. How heavy an item can I transport to my hand? Does the person know that that item disappeared off the table? Do I have to see the item in order to get it to leave, or can I view the item an hour ago? I know it's locked in a chest and then teleport that item. That conversation is one that happens between both the players, and the game master, and that fruitful void is a thing that that is part of the game and is not for players who play in the OSR. That is a feature, not a detriment. Now, of course, some of you may be thinking, well, wouldn't this derail the game because we're going to have this out of game description about what it can do? Or will it derail the game when we have arguments? And both are true, but I dare say that the use of the fruitful void is, and this is just my own personal opinion, it's a bullshit detector. And what I mean by that is some people you play with, you might have a feeling that these are the kind of individuals you really don't want to game with. And yeah, Drew, yeah, maybe you should. Um, yeah, the elemental wall is also composed of Karens who stonewall you, and if you try to get past them, they will want to talk to your manager. Can you? Wouldn't that be hilarious to really do that? Like, it's a giant wall of Karen screaming for the manager, and everyone's just holding their ears, like, "Shut up! Shut the hell up, you stupid bitch!" Oh, I like it. I don't know. There's something. I don't know how far you could take it in a role playing game, but I guess you could put it in like a modern day post apocalyptic game. It's like alien invasion, asteroid impact, um, pandemic, of zombie apocalypse, and destruction of civil order by Karens, I guess would be kind of included in that. Like the downfall of civilization is just all the Karens in line everywhere, uh, begging to for everything. Now, um, there are, let's see if I can go. Um, okay, let's go to Knave. Let's let's do that. Let's go over to Knave. Um, mhm. Oh, I did go over to Knave. Okay, Knave. This is Knave's second edition, and again, this game is also has an SRD, and Knave second edition. Um, I think Ben Milton, who runs the channel Questing Beast, came up with Knave. It is another OSR game. It also has a fruitful void element to it. And let's see if we can go to the OGL portion of this. Here we go. Permission is granted to photocopy or reproduce for personal use. Anyone may publish free for commercial material or free or commercial material declaring compatibility with Knave without express written permission from the author, as long as they state the following. Um, Product name is independent production of publisher name and is not affiliated with Questing Beast LLC. Questing Beast LLC takes no responsibility for any legal claims against your product. The game mechanics of Knave Second Edition may be reused freely, but the text and art may not. And printed in the Czech Republic, which I did not know that. Swordfish Islands, San Antonio, Texas. But anyway, so there are many things in this game. Of course, this game is chock full of random tables and things like that. And if we go to, I believe it's 28. There we go. Yep. So if we go to this part of Knave, second edition, again, we have spells. Now, there are some rules for spells, but essentially, no, right? So spell number 13 says body swap. And if you can tell, these are random tables. So maybe someone might randomly find it in a scroll. You may randomly roll them up for your character, whatever. So it says body swap. You switch bodies with a creature you touch for intelligence turns. If one body dies, the other dies as well. That's it. So you switch bodies with a creature you touch for intelligence turns. Does it need to be biological body? What's the rule? Most role-playing games in the fantasy D20 have an armor class system. But touching a creature is different than hurting a creature. And does that mean you have to touch them on their flesh? So if they have plate mail armor and a shield, you actually can't touch them? Or does it mean all you have to do is grab their ankle and it works? What if you're just having a random conversation and you shake their hand? Does that count as a touch? Um, when does touch and body swap happen? Does it have to happen immediately? Like I touched a person on the back of the head and now I switch bodies, or can I touch them an hour ago? I shook a person's hand an hour ago and now I switch bodies. And then it says if one body dies, the other dies as well. Well, if your game has some weird like, well, you're dying, but you're not dying, but you're dying in 60 turns, does that mean you're dead or dying? And does that mean your body swaps? And can you tell if the other body dies? Right? These are all rules that could come up in a game with the creative use of this. And do the players kidnap the goblin because you just switched, or tie you down? You switch bodies with the goblin's in your body, but they're tied up. You act as the goblin to infiltrate the goblin ward, but then the goblin is your character who now is a third level rips out of the ropes. I mean, a lot of funny things could happen with this, and that only happens in the Fruitful Void. So I just want to show or share with you some of this using Fruitful Voids. Shai says, "Yay, Czech Republic, my alma mater." Yep. Yeah. Now there are other games talking about like randomization and things like that. There's a game known as Caltrop Core. I don't know why I didn't find this first, but it's strange. This is a free game, and let's see if we can share this out. This is a free game, and nope, I want to share this. And this free game, when it comes to game design, is its bare minimum. Again, this is a free game, and I love simplicity. I love things taking down, like complex things taken to its very best, simplest form. And Caltrop Core, I know you're going to go, well, where's the game at, right? Because you're actually looking at it. There are two versions of this. If you go to the website, you can just download this image. And what I mean by download the image, and I'm going to end up. I have not paid for this yet, but I'm going to give them drop this person some money. Right here, where the finger is, where it says Caltrop Core, there's a white background and thick bold letters Caltrop Core to the left of me, and D4 result. And then this other version here for Caltrop Core, which has been rewritten with a darker background with a D4 result, is the role-playing game. And according to Titanomachi, I don't know. Over 200 games have been created with this. So if I click this, let's see. Can I get it bigger? It's not getting big enough. Let's see. All right. It's not big enough. Sorry about that. But essentially, this is the entire game. And this was created from the 200-word role-playing game contest. And this individual has been creating other games, free SRDs. But basically, the result is here. Caltrop Core, which is D4s, if you don't know. Here's the core of the system using D4s. It all fits on one page, so keep this handy while designing for it. For a stat-driven game, simply assign a number between 1 and 3 to each stat. When that stat comes into play, roll that many D4s. Take the highest roll. You make up your own stats for your own game. For a token-based game, players can gain and expend tokens, rolling as many D4s as tokens they expend. Take the highest roll. Tip, only roll dice when the action can be phrased as in I want to statement. I want to jump over a cliff. I want to convince the guard. I want to build a structure. I want to. And then there's only 4 results. And it's either absolute failure, you don't get what you want and things get a lot worse. Partial failure, you don't get what you want. Partial success, you get what you want, but things get complicated. And then absolute success, you get what you want and more. And that's the game. and then you design anything you want with it. Like, is this are there hit points? Is there damage? What is the purpose of the game? What are the stats? And like you can make up your own stats. Like you could have earth, air, fire, water. You could have king, queen, knight, bishop. You could have north, east, south, west. You may have blood, steel, shadow, and fire as stats. And I picked four because I liked the idea of D4s. And D4s are they're kind of a stepchild of the tabletop role playing community. It kind of looked at as the worst of it. This one's a little harder to see, I know, on the screen with the dark background and such, but it's exactly the same thing. This one instead says, for stat driven games, simply assign a number between 1 and 5. And then when that stat comes into play, roll that many D4s. This is a little bit bolder. And yeah, and basically it says to credit, just add built on Caltrip Core or a Caltrip Core TTRPG to your doc. And of course, you can go to you can go directly to the website and find the other games as well that are developed under Titanomachi, um, and things of that nature. But I thought it would be fun. I like the idea of like taking something complicated and making it super, super, super simple. Um, lastly, let's see if I can find the game because I do have the game. I just need let's see. Mm-mm-mm. Moving to another window here. What's the name of the game? These are other games created. The Emerge 8. Uh, this E is supposed to be an 8 as well. SRD for TTRPGs, you design as you play. And again, off on the side is the actual game that you create. And you can rejigger this as you want. And I love the idea of these SRDs because it gives us a foundation to work off of. It allows us to give credit to other creators. And if you are a game designer, you have a great setting. Looking at some of these free SRDs, meaning system reference documents. So it's not just you can use the game, but you have something to base it off of. Um, they may have features that play very much into the type of game that your game has. So if it's very lethal, maybe there's something very lethal. If it's horror or action or romance or comedy or exploration or any of those features or any combinations thereof, reflavoring these is a great way to go, oh, here are rules that everyone can understand. But in my setting and my layout and my art and my terminology, my semantics and terminology, I can really get it to become what I want. And this one is pretty interesting because you actually can build the game and the characters on the fly during the game. So there is a skill list, and what happens is it goes from 8, it goes 8 down to 4, down to 2, down to 1, and it's based on a D8 system as well. You roll multiple D8, so 2D8, 3D8, 4D8, 8-sided dice, and there's a skill list, and the skill list is not what you think it is. So the skill list is bizarre, breath, form, go, moxie, put, turn, and work. Um, fruitful void skill list, if you really think about it. And so if I go to the next page, that's page 3, and of course it says change any of these skills to meet your needs or create your own list of 8 fun to interpret words to build on your game from the ground up. So very much like that. And then if you move to the next page, as an example, there are difficulties you can set. So when you roll like 3D8 against certain difficulties, like let's say the difficulty is very hard, then you roll 3D8. Maybe 2 of those dice are 6 or above. So that means you get 2 successes, which is a complete success. It's a dice pool system. Dice pool systems tend to do that. And then for creating characters, you have abilities and how it works. and let's see, and powers, and then ultimates. So let me go backwards. So an ability is you take two skills and you take them literally to the next level. So you combine two skills to turn it into an ability unique to your character. So for example, it says perhaps the word bizarre plus work becomes an alchemy ability, and moxie plus breath could become the withstand ability, and you name that ability. And then and you can never use two at the same time. So you have 8 abilities. So if you put two of them together, you have 4 abilities, and then you have powers. And your powers are 2 of your abilities, and then of course you take 2 powers and put them together, and that becomes an ultimate, which is optional. So, yep, how it works: add up the dots in 4 skills of your choice and roll that many dice. If a roll meets or beats the difficulty, it counts as one success. That's the game. So, yeah, you have 8 skills. You combine 2 of them in any order you want, and that becomes an ability. After you have your ability is established, then you combine 2 of those to create a power, and then after you have those, you combine 2 of those and you make an ultimate ability, and then you name it what you want. And I was like, that's really cool. And of course, you can actually do this on the fly. Like you could have the X-Men, the X Professor Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, where you're learning your powers. You can do this with a classroom of magical students that are learning their powers. This could be a spy thriller where characters are on the fly using different skills to solve different situations and things. And I thought that would be kind of fun. And I just wanted to share it out. There are plenty of these out there, by the way, in the creative sphere. And I like the idea that you have many options to pull from. Like for example, Obsidian Star. Let's see if I can. I didn't think about sharing this out, but I'm going to. So, for example, for Obsidian Star, one version of Obsidian Star, I am share this tab instead. Yes, I want to share this tab. It's a Google Doc, and the current name of this is called Escape Velocity, and I'm using the trophy SRD. So I'm going to use Obsidian Star in different sectors of space. I'm also working my own system at the same time, but different sectors of space will have different game elements or different SRDs to enable different types of gameplay within our own solar system. And Escape Velocity is the horror version of it, of these rules. And it is rooted in trophy. So this is I'm using the SRD and just copy and paste it exactly what they told me to do. And so, yep. To give proper credit, add the following after your own copyright in the same size as your copyright, and this is it. And since I'm using it, that means the game I'm using it. Since the game I'm designing is using an open gaming license, then my game will be open gaming license. And it's your fault. And here are some of the elements of it, like Obsidian Star Escape Velocity. And I'm using escape velocity as a word for like, you want to escape as fast as you can, because this is going to be more horror related. And it's about acquiring resources out in the Kuiper Belt, Uranus, Neptune, Charon, Pluto, the Oort cloud, and that kind of thing, and the horrors that happen when you're out there, from being so isolated out there, and the dangers of um, of acquiring very important resources. Yes, it is a resource extraction game. Why are you doing it? It can be for wealth or status or some kind of reputation. It could be for transporting needed resources from one hab to another. You're protecting a place. It could be um, policing the spaceways to get those resources where they need to go to retrieve them back from pirates and things like that. But there's many kinds of things here. There are going to be different 6 truths of Obsidian Star. Like for example, fair fights aren't. I need to bold that. Stars burn bright is another truth. Resources are the source is another one. So and I'm trying to make all these like one line basically. Like fair fights aren't. Standing up to a foe in lethal combat will result in death. The stars must work together, use tactics, harness the environment, and utilize assets. A better practice: run, hide, flee, cower, retreat. So this isn't a combat-oriented game. If you stand up to something, you're probably going to die. Um, why did I do that? Oh, I know, because trophies part of the game. And these are different types of resources that are available. This game uses a D6 system. I really want to keep my D12, so I'm still I'm not going to change that though. But everything from helium-3 to graphene to aerogel to information, cobalt, aluminum, palladium, diamonds, zippers, um, um, WRC seed is wheat, rice, cereals. No, wheat, rice, corn. Sheesh. Maybe I should write that down somewhere. Blueprints, boron, iron, methane, those kind of things. But anyway, I want to share that out to you guys, and you guys could do the exact same thing if you really wanted to. Um, when designing your own games. This logo I made, this Obsidian Star logo, the same one on my t-shirt, is the one I created using Canva. The rooted in TTRPG.com is the one created by the owners of Trophy, and that is their logo if you attempt to use their game. So that's it. So guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. We'll talk about other creative elements as well going later on. Guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for spending your valuable time here on the channel. I hope in return I can make change for your tabletop role-playing science fiction experience. Drew says, will your game have different titles depending on the system you're using, like Obsidian Star Horror Edition? Yes. So specifically, for example, this one is going to be called, and I guess I should make it, maybe I should make it a little bit more you can't see it, which that's horrible. Each actually, it should be the opposite. It should be Obsidian Star Escape Velocity instead of the other way around. But so everything's going to be listed under the name Obsidian Star. Like I said, I think I'm holding myself back with perfection and not doing good. So there's rules already set. So if I page down here, right, these rules already exist. All I need to do is just reflavor a little bit, rename it, add in the functions of a science fiction, hard science fiction game. But these rules that I'm paging through already exist. And all I need to do is put it in the hands of you guys. Now, I'm not using this rule system for everything. This is just literally horror. So it won't be called Obsidian Star Horror Edition. It's going to be called Obsidian Star Escape Velocity, and then underneath it will be horror science fiction, blah blah blah, like a one-liner. What is it called? Elevator pitch, byline. I don't know what it's called, but you understand what I'm saying. There's a doing that in that way. Good Monday part 2. Yeah, exactly. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, and that way I'm going to be able to get it in other people's hands and get the rules into people's hands and get the word out there, so that I don't think it's ever been done this way before. So I'm going to be the first to do it. So what happens most of the time is someone uses one set of rules for one game to say this is how the game should be played. I'm going to take a different feature and go, you know what? I'm going to take these rules light systems and say, no, the kind of game you want to play, you choose what kind of game you want to play and then play it within this setting. And it'll have the setting is exactly the same throughout, but the way you play it's going to be different. So, for example, in this particular version using Trophy, it is very lethal. You're probably going to go insane, and standing up to there seems to be something wrong here. There. Hmm. Hmm. There's a void. Anyway, sorry, my eye sees something. But the idea is that if you want to play like a mothership horror, empty starship out in the dead space or something like that, this is the game that you want to play. If you want to play a run and gun, Destiny style, what's the other one? Warframe, um, Halo. This isn't the game, but it's still in the same world. So, and I'm using different parts of our own solar system to do it. This is a hyper belt, basically. Yeah, it's Obsidian Star escape velocity is about. I did it wrong. About surveying, pinpointing, demarcating, extracting, transporting, and distributing valuable resources from across the system. That's what it's about. Stars may encounter, self-replicating nanotech, rogue AI, fourth war machines, pirates, enforcers, isolated communities, and eldritch horrors spawned from forgotten laboratories. Sometimes the most dangerous enemies are our allies. Sometimes that danger arrives from ourselves. So part of this of Trophy that I think is really bizarre, but I like it, is that there is built into the system a player versus player mechanism as characters begin going a little bit insane. And at a certain point, to alleviate yourself of the growing isolation and insanity, as I'm reading it, you may have to work against your owners to achieve to get rid of that stress that is on you, which means that yes, at a certain point you might be working against your own players. And so yeah, it's crazy. There's rules for it. Drew says, I call my space horror narrative Gravity Lost. I like that. I like that too. Yeah. Yeah. Drew says, Escape Velocity is a cool name. I dig it for horror. Thank you. Although, again, I had to pull it out of my ass. I like Gravity Lost. I like that. I because it makes you feel like because gravity makes us feel like we're grounded. And if you lose that, if you lose what's under your feet, there's I remember in martial arts we did a lot of like being tossed, tumbling, essentially turning upside down because we don't want to be upside down. We don't want to be in free fall because it makes us when you go into free fall, your arms and legs start to flail naturally because we're trying to grab onto something that we have. So yeah, Gravity Lost is really good. I really like that because it makes you feel like you're what's the Eminem song? Oops, there goes gravity. Oops, mom spaghetti. You know, on my shirt. Oops, there goes gravity. So yeah, it makes you feel like, oh no, I, I can't even trust. I can't even trust my own feet. Marathon by Bungie Software, the Obsidian Star of old school ego shooters. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, yeah. So that's my goal is to make like 2, 3, 5, 8 of these games that all take place in the same universe, but different thematic elements given to them, so that if you want to play a political thriller, you could play an Obsidian Star. You want to play a high stakes heist, spy, assassination, black ops kind of thing, you can do that. You want to play a run and gun, Halo, yeah, Bungie, um, Destiny 2 style armored individuals also who are wearing like coats and cloaks for I don't know why they're wearing clothing over, but you get my point, right? You can play those kind of things and use different rules. So guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. Guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility. Oh, bye. Thank you very much. Oh, and also maybe one of these days I'll give you a tour. This is my wife and I, this is our entertainment cave. My computer and my hutch happens to actually be in a closet. So where my hands are sitting is actually the wall of the closet, and there's a door, sliding doors, and then there's my hutch. So behind me is a whole bunch of other things. There's like Spider-Man. going with the wind and all. Look, I love my movies, and of course, there's a window behind me, as you can see when the sun comes up. So maybe I might even do that. Like I've got a. You can't see it. You can't see it because of the microphone, but like, yeah, I've got the force. May the force be with you. There's a table. Maybe I might do that one of these days, or maybe I'll take a video of it and post it up or something. Take you on a tour, and I've got all my standees over my shoulder here. Black Panther and Falcon and all the rest of them. Guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Who's this? Yeah, tour the cave. Actually, I do have a man cave, but this is one wife and I share. And of course, this from my point of view, I don't see much of a reflection, but my camera's picking up a huge glossy reflection off of our television. We've got one of those old school curves TVs where it curves and it's really picking up the sunlight. But from my point of view, oh, okay, I see it. I see it. It's difficult to see it from here, but yeah, it's just picking up a reflection. But yeah, maybe I'll do that. Yeah, maybe, one of these days, or pick up my camera and be like, hey, this is over here and this is over here. just pull it out, just hold the camera in my hand the whole time. Um, Podcasters seem to be doing that. Like they're always holding the microphone, keeping it very close. Little bit of ASMR, you know. Maybe I should be gumming a banana or something if you guys like that. No, we're not doing that. Hell no. We're not doing that. But maybe some other things. Anyway, guys, let me let you get the hell up out of here. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility.